I wanted to do this quiz kind of in this format early on in the semester is for you to realize that what we talk about in a previous class more than likely is going to be used in a future class. Okay, and so we're going to build upon these things. And so it's really important that you try your best not to get behind on some of the concepts, because otherwise there'll be some other ones we add to, and then it'll just kind of cause you to be a little bit more behind. So I want you, if you feel like you're getting behind or you feel like you're not quite grasping it, please feel free to email me and schedule a time to come talk with me. All right. So basically, we're doing those four mathematical functions. It is the triangle we talked about. We'll talk about this a little bit more in class today, but the tool is divided into three parts. The top on the one on the top and two on the bottom. The top represents the cost. Okay. The horizontal line that separates the top of the triangle from the bottom is that division. Okay. Letter A represents. Why do I have cost percent or menu price?
You mean the same thing.
Well, that doesn't mean the same thing, but it could be either one of those. Why? Because the bottom is multiplication. It doesn't matter which one goes where because it's the same thing. It's multiplication. It could be any order. Okay. Letter B represents the cost. And so now we'll manipulate this triangle again in class today. So we'll go over this. But if we're looking for the percentage, where is my... We have our triangle, cost, percent, sales. So if we are looking for food cost percentage, we cover that up. And what's left over is cost divided by the selling price. Okay. And then the same thing, if we're looking for our food cost, we cover up the top portion, and what's left is the sales times percentage. All right. Questions, comments, concerns about this?
No, sir.
Awesome. So let's jump into chapter 1 and chapter 2. Oops. We will get through chapters 1 and 2 today. If you would like to, if you're at home and you want to open up the in-class discussion notes, you can do that. If you're here in class and you have your computer, you can do that as well. I recommend that you have those notes pages as you're watching the pre-class videos, because in those pre-class videos, we'll cover some of the same things. Then that way, when you come to class, you are just filling in the holes in that page, and it's a lot easier for you to complete that in-class notes page. All right. So we talked about last class. We talked about the formula for profit and loss is the sales minus the expenses, right? So using that formula, profit or loss is equal to sales minus expenses, or in other words, our expenses are costs. What is the relationship between cost and the profitability of our organization, of our restaurant? How does cost impact or influence the profitability?
If cost is kept pretty low with the same level of revenue, then the profit will go up.
Absolutely. So if we can keep our expenses down, right? The sales, that's the revenue, that's the money that comes in. If we can keep our expenses down, then our profit will go up. Okay. If we have $100,000 in sales, okay, and my expenses in January were $10,000, right? What would be my profit? Let me take that back. I'm going to flip that. My sales were $100,000. My expenses were $60,000. What's 100 minus 60? I got $40,000, right? Well, in February, if I can control my costs better, maybe if I get $100,000 in sales, control my costs and bring them down to 30,000, and that means my profit goes up, right? So the sales minus the cost, we can keep those low. However, the flip side is also true. As our expenses go up, our profit is going to go down. Okay. So as our expenses get really high, then our profit is going to impact our profit. We'll see that in both chapter 1 and chapter 2 today. Okay. So just looking at these numbers. Okay. For example, number 1, do we have a profit or do we have a loss? Why do we have a profit?
Sales is more than.
Because our sales are more than our expenses, right? Our expenses are less. So that means we're going to have some money left over from the sales. In this case, we have how much money left over?
$5,000.
5,000.
5,000.
Yep. Thank you so much. Okay. 25,000 minus 20,000 in expenses. We have $5,000 in profit. Okay. What about example number 2? Profit or loss?
Loss.
It's going to be a loss. Good. Thank you. Okay. And it's going to be a loss of $100 because our expenses are more than our sales. We spent more money than we brought in. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about that?
No, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we have 3 different types of costs. We have fixed, variable, and semi-variable. Okay. Who wants to take a stab at which graph, A, B, or C, represents the fixed costs?
C.
C.
Okay, so who agrees with C?
E.
Okay.
C.
Why does C represent the fixed costs?
It's going straight.
Because the costs don't change.
The costs don't change, exactly, right? This gray line right here of the cost, it stays flat. Doesn't matter how much money we bring in. Okay, our sales go up and down, but our fixed costs, our costs stay the same. Okay, so those are things like rent, what we pay to lease the building or the truck, if we have a food truck, right? That rent is a fixed cost. We also have salaries. It doesn't matter if we have 1 person walk in our door, if we have 100 people walk in our door. We have to pay our manager the same salary. Okay, that's a fixed cost. All right, what about variable costs? Which graph?
A.
A? Do we all agree with A?
Yes.
Why does the A represent our variable costs?
Cost change.
So our costs do change.
It stays with the sales.
Right.
Exactly. If we were to measure point to point, you see the lines that I'm drawing from point to point, the sales to the cost. Those lines are all the exact same length, right? So that's what we mean by our costs move in direct proportion. So as our sales go up, well, yeah, it makes sense our cost is going to go up. Why does it make sense that our costs are going to go up if our sales go up?
Need more product.
We need more product. We need more ingredients. We need more people.
Demand's going to be higher.
What's that? Say it one more time.
The demand's going to be higher.
Yeah, so there's more demand, there's more people wanting our product, and so we have to spend more money on the ingredients. We have to spend more money on labor in order to prepare the food and serve the food, okay? So the variable costs, that is what we call F&B. Okay? F&B is an acronym that you have to know. In our industry, it's short for food and beverage. Okay, food and beverage. And then we also have wages. Wages. I was listening to a podcast recently, and they said there's a state, I don't remember which state it is, but they're actually bringing back cursive writing into elementary school. They're making all their elementary kids learn how to write cursive.
They don't do that anymore?
No, I remember my book. I'd write that A over and over with the lines. I always wanted my first name to start with a G because it's such a cool letter to write in cursive. But, all right, I digress. All right, so they go up and down in direct proportion. Okay, semi-variable by default. Am I recording this? Me too.
Yes, it says
Okay,
it's being
good. Awesome, thank you. If not, I taught this class this morning, so I can always just use that one. All right, so semi-variable, you see how our costs kind of go up and down, but it's not in the same proportion because semi-variable has both variable and fixed. And the one thing that we consider semi-variable is labor. Okay. You'll want to remember this for your chapter 1 homework, the defining control homework. Semi-variable cost is labor because labor has salaries and wages. Okay. Labor encompasses both salaries and wages, which wages are the variable and salaries are fixed. That's why we call them semi-variable. All right. So now we have two different categories of costs, things that are within our control and things that are outside of our control in the short term. Okay. So these are your fixed costs and these are your variable costs. Right? In the short term, if I don't like where my restaurant is, can I just change my rent? I can call my landlord tomorrow and be like, look, I know you charge me $2,000 a month, but I really only want to pay $1,000 a month. Okay. We can't do that in the short term. But if we look at our controllable costs, which are food and beverage and wages, okay, food and beverage and wages, if we look at those controllable costs, if we got really slammed for dinner and we're open for 3 more hours and there's nobody in our restaurant, do we keep all 9 of our servers on the floor?
No, you
We
cut
gotta send
them.
them. We gotta send them home. We gotta cut people. We gotta phase them out, right? Because what is that? What's that famous saying? If you have time to lean,
You have time to clean.
you got time to clean, right? If you're gonna be on the clock, I want you to work, right? They'll pull the seat out of the booth and wipe behind it, right? If you're on the clock, I need you to be doing something. Okay, so if you don't have any tables as a server, I remember so many times like we had deep clean projects. So if we had no guests to serve, but we still wanted hours, well, then we're out down there taking all the ketchup and mustard bottles out of the little server station area and getting all the way back in the back with a towel and wiping it clean, doing the booth, making sure that every single sugar caddy on our tables has exactly 10 sugars, 5 sweet and lows, and 5 equals, and it's all nice and beautiful, right? So that's what we can do to maximize what we're spending on wages. But if there's none of those special projects, then we got to go home. Okay, some people have to go home. So prime cost. Prime cost is food and beverage and labor. Okay. Food and beverage and labor is our prime cost. And the reason why it is our prime cost is because it is our most controllable. It's our most controllable. We can control how much product we order based on the inventory we have on hand. If we're going to be really busy, we're going to stock up on inventory. If we're not going to be busy, we're not going to order as much. Okay? We're going to talk about forecasting in the next chapter, in chapter 2. Okay? But forecasting, we're going to use the past data to predict the future. So last time something happened, a holiday was on a specific day, right? So if Valentine's Day, I always like to use that because it's coming up soon. If Valentine's Day is on a Friday or a Saturday, do you think our level of business is different than if it's on a Tuesday or a Wednesday?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in the hotels. Because if it's over the weekend, then people might be doing staycations. They may be going out and staying in hotels. Whereas if it's a Tuesday or Wednesday, they may just go out to dinner and go home. Okay. We can also look at special events. So what happened in 2025 last year in San Antonio? The Final Four.
Class.
It's not happening this year. Okay. So do you think all those restaurants downtown, can they use the same data from 2025 to predict their sales for 2026?
No.
No. They're going to want to go back to 2024 numbers when we didn't have a Final Four. Okay. The last time we had Final Four was 2018, the men's. We had women in 2021, and we're going to have the women again in 2027. So we'll have the women Final Four here next year. Okay. It's going to be really hard to compare those two. Because what happened in 2021? What was happening in the world in 2021? COVID was happening, right? So San Antonio was set to host the women's Final Four in 2021. But because of the pandemic, they didn't do all the championship games and the bracket like they would have done in a normal season. They brought every single team to San Antonio. We didn't just host the Final Four, we hosted the entire March Madness in San Antonio. And so when we host it again in 2027, we can't go back to that and say, let's do the same amount of revenue, right? Because it's a different environment. So you gotta have to kind of keep those things in mind. So let's take a look at this. Our food cost ranges on industry average between 30 to 33%. 30 to 33% is the industry standard, industry average. Okay. Now, if you're a steakhouse, you have higher protein items, higher cost proteins, you're going to have a higher food cost. If you're a breakfast place, you're serving pancakes, right? Waffles, which are really inexpensive to make, you may have a lower food cost, right? But the industry average is about 30 to 33%. For labor, we're looking at anywhere from 30 to 35%. And again, that varies. If I'm a fast food restaurant and I just have someone taking orders and then the people in the back making the food, okay, my labor is a lot less than if I'm a fine dining restaurant and I have a server, I have a busser, I have a server assistant, I have a dining room manager, my labor gets a lot bigger, okay? So, but if we look at these, the high average, 33 and 35. What is 33 plus 35? 68. 68%. Excuse me, percent. What does cent mean? Good catch. What does cent mean? 100, right? So cent is 100. So per 100, 68 per 100. So if we look at it from this way, Brent just said pennies, right? So that means 68 cents. Oops. 68 cents of every dollar, every $1 I bring in, 68 cents is going to cover my food and beverage and my labor. That's it. So if I've got 68 cents tied up in those two things, that means I have what?
2% left.
32 cents. That's got to cover all my other expenses. Plus, hopefully, I'll have some profit left over. Okay. So if we're looking at it this way, if I can bring my food cost, if I can implement some cost savings, and I can bring my food cost down from 33 to 30%, that's 3 pennies. Okay. 3 pennies. That represents 3 pennies. So now I've got 35 cents instead of 32. And you might think, Mr. Uminski, that's only 3 pennies. That's not a big deal, right? Well, 3 pennies is not a big deal on $1,
It matters on the amount that you're talking about.
but 3 pennies, 3%. Let me pull up my calculator so I can show you the screen. 3 pennies, and let's say we do $1.5 million in sales for the year. That's an extra $45,000. So if you can save 3 pennies per dollar that comes in at the end of the year with $1.5 million in sales, those 3 pennies add up to $45,000. What could you do with an extra $45,000 in your business?
A lot.
A lot. You might be able to revamp your menu. You might be able to buy matching dining room furniture. Okay, maybe you're opening your restaurant for the first time and everything is just kind of mismatched because that's what you had available. And then you're at this time where you're like, you know what, $45,000, let's buy all matching furniture. Let's elevate it. Or let's say we're an Italian restaurant. For $45,000, do you think you could take part of your staff over to Italy where they can learn how to make pasta and then come back and add that to your menu and elevate your menu and elevate your offerings? So there's lots of different things we can do. All right, so what was the ingredient on the pre-class video that I talked about for cost savings idea? What was it?
Lemons.
Lemons. How many of you have no idea what I'm talking about when I'm talking about how lemons can be a cost savings idea? Absolutely. Okay, so by a show of hands, raise your hand if you do not like lemon with your iced tea or your ice water. You know how sometimes restaurants will serve it automatically, a lemon wedge? Raise your hand if you do not like lemon with your tea or water. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to add myself in there. 7. I see 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's 10 out of 21. Let's just call it 10 out of 20 to make it easy. All right, so that's how much. What percentage is that? 50%. Okay, 50% is the number of people in this class that does not like lemon with their tea or their water. Okay, now let's say we serve 300 people per day. What is 50% of 300 or half of 300?
150.
So we multiply that by 0.5 and we get 150 people. Now, that lemon costs us how much? That lemon wedge. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
25 cents.
Well, yeah, so let's say a lemon costs us what? Let's call it 60 cents, right? I think they're about 50 cents to $1 now. Let's call it 60 cents and we get 6 slices out of a lemon. So how much does that one lemon slice cost? 10
10
cents.
cents.
So now we're going to multiply by 10 cents. And that is equal to $15. So that's $15 a day on one lemon. Now, if we multiply that by 360 days out of the year, because we're closed for 5 days, right? There's some holidays. What is 360 times 15? $5,400. So on the previous example, we've saved $45,000 by reducing our food cost by 3 pennies. And now we're going to save 5,400. That's 50 grand. Now it's very easy. It's easy to say that over actually implementing it, right? And following through. But if our standard operating procedure is that everybody gets a lemon, no matter what, versus if we flip that and we say, would you like a lemon with your tea? And if they say no, then guess what? I don't put a lemon on there. And that lemon doesn't end up in the trash. Okay? And that could potentially represent $5,400 in savings. And that's a lemon. Okay? So what are some of y'all's ideas? What are some ways that we can save on our expenses?
Buy in bulk.
Okay, so we might buy in bulk. Oftentimes when we buy in bulk, it allows us to get a better price. Good. What else?
Maybe eliminate something you're not selling as much.
Yeah, so if you're not selling as much, maybe you eliminate that. And we'll talk about that in chapter 4. Okay. Good. What else?
Seasonal items.
All right. So we might have seasonal items. Because what happens if an ingredient is out of season? What does that do to the price?
It
It goes
increases.
way up, right? But if we buy it in season when there's a lot of it, then that price will come down.
And on top of that, I feel like the quality is also like it goes down too.
Yeah.
Like when you're in season, so it's not worth it as much either.
Absolutely. I've done a couple like charcuterie boards lately, and I usually put strawberries on my charcuterie boards. But lately, the strawberries just don't look good. They don't look like they do in the summertime. And so I'm like, I'm not going to spend my money on that. I'm going to choose a different fruit that is more in season. Okay, what else?
Food waste management, like
Okay, food waste management. Good. What do we mean by food waste management?
so like keeping a waste log, kind of. in a
Okay,
way.
yep. So we'll talk about that in chapter, I believe, 7 and 8 about using a waste log. So we know how much we're wasting. And if we're wasting a lot of food, then we can use the idea of correcting that behavior so we don't waste that food. Okay. But think about like, let's say we've prepared a lot of roast chicken and it doesn't sell. Do I just throw it in the trash?
No.
Finding other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
How else
repurposing.
would you use roast chicken? Make a chicken salad or put it like in salad, right? What else?
Or like a chicken soup.
Maybe dice it up and put it in chicken soup. Good.
Serve it as a special.
Serve it as a special. That's a great idea. Serve it as a special. Okay. Because then people look at it and they're like, oh, I can only get it today. So I've got to get it. Okay. Serve it as a special. My first summer in Maine, y'all, I'm so sorry. I'm coughing so much. I don't know why. My first summer in Maine, I take that back. My 4th summer in Maine, when I went back in 2015, the first day the staff was helping me clean up after dinner, and it was spaghetti. And they literally just took everything on my table and just dumped it in the trash. And I was like, what are y'all doing? And I was like, I'm really confused. Like, why'd you just throw all that food away? And they said, well, that's what the cook last year did. They just threw everything away at the end of the meal and just made fresh every single day. And I was like, no. That spaghetti is going to become lo mein noodles in 3 days when I toss it with some brown sugar, soy sauce, and ginger. And the students have no idea it was spaghetti from 3 days before, right? Or the sauce. If I have extra sauce, I'm going to freeze it. And I'll unfreeze it and use it for the next time in 2 weeks later. Or if I'm going to be making pizzas, I'm going to use that spaghetti sauce on the pizzas, right? And so that summer, my budget was about $16,000 that summer, okay? The cook before in 2014 went $3,000 over budget. And in 2015, I came $3,000 under budget. So I saved my boss $6,000 from one summer to the next, right? Just because I knew how to reuse things effectively. If I had mashed potatoes one day, okay, well then in about maybe early the next week, we're gonna do a shepherd's pie. I was gonna pack all that mashed potatoes on top of a nice beef and vegetable gravy and call it shepherd's pie. The kids have no idea they're eating leftovers, okay? So using those things creatively. On the first day of summer camp, the parents are dropping their kids off. And so I am roasting usually between 6 to 12 chickens in my ovens. One, because it makes my kitchen smell amazing, right? And they walk in, I'm in my chef coat, and the whole appearance, the smell, everything, the whole environment. The other thing is, once those chickens come out, I'm deboning them. I'm going to use it for chicken salad. I'm going to use it for chicken tacos at some point, okay? All those bones, all those carcasses, do they just go in the trash? No. I'm
No,
gonna
you
put
make
them into a pot and make chicken stock out of it. And that's what I'm gonna use for my sauces and my soups for the rest of the session, right? And so be able to do that and understand how you can manipulate those ingredients and get the maximum out of them is how we save on cost. All right. So after we have set those standards, we want to compare the actual performance to what our standard was, okay? And that's going to be looking for what we call the variance. Variance is just a business way of saying difference, the difference between two numbers, okay? Now, the variance is equal to our actual performance minus the budgeted or what we planned. Okay? This is really key. Just like in profit and loss, the sales has to go first. For the variance, the actual has to go first. And I always remember it alphabetically, right? A minus B, actual minus budgeted is how I memorize that. So in this example that we have here, we actually, this is our food sales, okay? So our money that we brought in was $90,000. That was our sales, okay? We budgeted for $100,000. So what is our difference?
Grand.
-10, yeah.
10,000. And because our actual is less than, we have a negative. That means we brought in less, $10,000 less than what we budgeted, what we wanted to do. Okay. And then we want to find that percentage. In business, we like percentages, right? It's a lot easier to say that we're over or under by a certain percentage than the actual dollar amount. So what we do is we take what our difference is, the variance, and we divide by our budgeted amount. Whatever that budgeted amount was, that's what we're going to divide by. So 10,000 divided by 100,000 is 10%. And that's why, because of the negative, it's a negative 10%. That means we did not quite meet our budget of $100,000 in sales. Is that a good number or a bad number? What do you think? Thumbs up for good number, thumbs down for bad number. Okay, I see some thumbs down. I see a couple thumbs up. The answer is, it depends. This is only one piece of the puzzle, the sales. We don't know what we did on expenses. If our expenses were way up and our sales are down, that's not a good number. But if our sales are down and we were able to also, bless you, we were also able to control our expenses and keep them low, then we can justify not having that high number. Okay? So here we go. Let's do another example. Actual $275,000 minus our budgeted of $250,000. What is our difference?
35,000.
$25,000. Okay. And so now we take that $25,000. We divide by our budgeted of 250,000. And we get what?
10% positive.
10%, and it's positive, which means we budgeted to bring in 250,000, but we actually brought in 275,000. So maybe we had a big push to get our servers to sell more appetizers or sell desserts, and we can raise our revenue. Okay. Let's do one more. We'll do the last one. We'll do this one right here. So this is covers. Oops. What does it cover? It's a reservation. It's one guest. Okay. So if we say 750 covers, that means we served 750 guests. Okay. We wanted to serve 750 guests. Depending on the level of service of your restaurant, you may walk in, the manager says, okay, tonight we have 350 covers. That means we have 350 reservations. And we also might have some walk-ins, so we might serve a few more than that, okay? But our budgeted was 750, our actual was 680. So actual minus the budgeted is equal to, okay, negative 70. And then we take that difference of negative 70 and we divide by our budget of 750. And I think it's 9.3. Okay. So 9.3%, and it's a negative, which means we didn't quite get as many guests as we thought we were going to. Questions, comments, concerns? The last thing we have to do. Oops. Oh, wait, no, that's on the next chapter. Just kidding. Next chapter. That was chapter 1. Let's talk chapter 2.
This PowerPoint, is it in the modules? It is, right?
It should be. If it's
Okay.
not, I'll get it added on there.
Just making sure.
All right. So in chapter 2, we're talking about budgets. Raise your hand if you have a personal budget. Anybody have a personal budget? Okay. I do. I can never stick to it. How many of y'all have a business budget that you work with? Or a professional budget?
I don't have a budget, but I have like where I know how much I have to sell something for to make profit.
Okay, so that's using that percentage format, yes. The budget is a plan. Okay, the budget allows you to identify how much money you expect to bring in, how much money you have to spend on different expenses. It helps kind of guide you throughout the period of time. And typically, when we are looking at forecasting, okay, so oops, forecasting. So we're looking at forecasting, taking the past data, predicting the future, okay? We typically are going to increase or decrease by percentages. I know in hotels, usually October is budget season. They're getting ready for the next year. It's a very stressful time because every department is trying to submit their budget, and then every department is trying to figure out what their budget is and how it plays into the overall hotel's budget to figure that out. And usually, we want to increase or decrease our last year's budget, different components by percentages. Now you'll notice. Step 1. In both, whether we increase or decrease, step 1 is the same thing. We want to multiply by the given percentage. Okay. The only difference between the two is if we increase our budget, if we're increasing by a percentage, we're going to take that answer and we're going to add it to the original number. If we're decreasing by a percentage, we're going to take that, whatever that number is, and we're going to subtract it from the original number. Okay. So let's do a couple of examples. We're going to focus on adding first. Okay. Let me get you guys down here. And oops. Let's get this over down here as well. Okay. So if we are adding by a percentage, we're increasing by 3%. What is 2,000 times 0.03?
60.
Okay. And so since we're increasing by 3%, we're going to add it to our original number of 2,000. And so our new number, our new budgeted number, that's horrible. Let me redo that. Sorry. Our new budgeted number is 2,060. So that's my new number that I'm focusing on because I took last time's number of 2,000. I'm going to increase by 3%. Okay. Now let's increase by 2.5%. So our original number is 5,000. Our historical data. And then we're going to multiply by 2.5% is what? 125? Do we all agree? We agree on line 125?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So now we add that 5,125. Okay. So that's our new number. That's our new budgeted number. Okay. Now, this is a two-step process, right? Step one, and then step two, we're adding to the original number. Okay. Can I show you a one-step process? And this is only if you want to do a one-step process. If you want to keep doing two-step, that's okay. I'm going to show you a one-step process. If we have 2,000, that represents 100%. Do we all agree? That's the original number, 100%. Now, if we want to add 3%, what is my new percentage? 103%.
103.
Now, if we move that decimal place over 2, then I get 1.03. And so if I multiply 2,000 times 1.03, it'll automatically give me 2060. Right? Because the 1's going to multiply by 2,000, the 0.03 is going to multiply and get 60, and your calculator will do all that work for you. Automatically do the 2060. Okay. What is 100 as a decimal? It's 1, right? Move that decimal place over 2. So if we did 2,000 times 1 is equal to 2,000. And when we add these two numbers together, we get the 1.03. Okay. So we can do that in our head. 100. I'm going to increase by 3. So that means 103. So let's look at our decimal for this one. 102.5. When I move that decimal over to, I'm going to do 5,000 times 1.025, and it will give me 5,125. Okay, so 2 steps, 1 step. You choose which one works best for you. Okay, let's talk about decreasing. Decreasing by a percentage. So the first step is the same. Step 1, we have to multiply by the percentage. So what is $15,000 times 0.05? So 5%.
750.
$750. Okay. And then because we're decreasing, we're going to subtract. So 14,250. Do you think my shortcut works on decreasing as well?
Yeah.
Okay, if we start with 100% and we're decreasing by 5, what do we get? 95%. Okay, as a decimal, 15,000 times 0.95 is equal to 14,250. Okay, so we're automatically taking that into consideration. But by all means, if a 2-step process works for you, do a 2-step process. Okay. This last one, 100 minus 1.5 gives me what? Okay, so Leanna gives us the answer of 1182. And how we got there was 98.5. Move that decimal place over. 1,200 times 0.985. My new number is 1182. Okay, so that's how we're going to be going up and down by percentages. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about that? All right. Let's look at our P&L. P&L statement, also known as an income statement. It's the same thing. Okay. Our budgets are very complicated. Okay. Our budgets are very complicated. A P&L or an income statement is a very simplified version of that. Okay. Food. We might have a meat budget. We might have a dairy budget. We might have a bread. We might have a grocery, like a staples, canned goods, frozen. All that's going to be divided into different budgets, but it's all just related to food, right? So our P&L is a very simplified snapshot. And what's on the bottom line? Profit. Okay. Sales, always at the top. Sales always at the top. Because that's the money that everything gets subtracted from. Okay. These are all of our costs. So sales minus our costs is equal to profit or loss. If this is a negative number, it's a loss. If it's positive, it's profit. Okay? Y'all follow me so far?
Sure.
Cool. How many of you have ever heard of a boss or have ever heard of in a management discussion where somebody is only concerned about the bottom line? Anybody ever heard that before? They're focused on the bottom line. This is the bottom line they're talking about. They get this P&L statement, and the first place their eyes go to the bottom line. Okay? So if they can save costs somewhere else, then that means that profit should come up as well. All right, we are going to do, hold on to your seats. We are going to do some algebra. I know, okay? We're going to do some algebra. What is our profit formula? Profit is equal to what?
Sales.
Sales minus cost, right? Sales minus costs. That's our formula, right? What if we want to have sales all by itself? We have to add costs here, right? The opposite. And then we have to add it over here as well. So if you see, sales is 100%. And then all of this also has to be 100%. Okay? All of that also has to be 100%. The sales plus the cost plus our profit is also has to equal 100%. That way the equation is balanced on both sides. Okay? The reason why I tell you this is because there's one question on your final exam that you're going to have in 14 weeks. We'll go over it. We'll review it. Don't worry. Okay? There's one question on your final exam that asks you a dollar amount in your budget but it only gives you percentages. Right? So how do we figure out what the dollar amount is for our labor cost if I only have percentages?
You add them up,
Okay, so we add them all up. Plus 25 plus 15.
40.
40 plus 21. 61 plus 11. 72. So these are 72. And we know that all of these together equals what? 100. So then that means 28%. That means my labor is 28%. Okay? And now, because you pay attention to Mr. Uminski's class, you remember, oh my gosh, I've got sales, I have a percentage, I'm looking for cost. I'm going to use my triangle. So if I'm looking for the cost, right? I have percent, I have sales, cover up that cost, and what's left over? Percent times the sales.
Sales.
And that tells me what my labor budget is. What is my labor budget? If I've got $3 million in sales, if I've got $3 million in sales and I'm aiming for a 28% labor cost, what is my budget?
840,000.
840,000. Thank you. Do we all agree? So that's why when you and your coworkers are joking around was getting close to closing time, and you have budgeted, your boss has budgeted an hour for you to close that restaurant when that last guest leaves, and an hour later you should be locking the door and you're taking too long. The reason why they're upset is because they only have $840,000. Everything is budgeted based on how many hours it's going to take to do something. Or if you're off at 9 o'clock and you're just chit-chatting with your friends and it's 8:58 and your manager's like, hurry up and clock out, right? They don't want to do any extra paperwork because they want you to be out at 9 o'clock. Okay. We also think about overtime. Overtime is what? Time and a half. So if we have people that are going into overtime, that eats up that $840,000 a lot faster. Okay. So there's reasons why sometimes they say, you know what, we can't do any overtime. We don't have the budget to do overtime. So this next one, if we add up all of these right here, what do we get?
90.
90, thank you. So 90%, which means my profit is 10%. And 10% of $100,000 is $10,000. Okay, so if you were given only percentages by category and they ask you for a dollar amount, we have sales as our dollar amount, we have the percentage, and we can use that triangle. Okay, now I know we have only talked about the triangle from the perspective of food cost, but we can also do from labor cost and other expenses. Okay, so why do you think it's important? Why do you think it's important to be able to divide your food costs into the different categories?
You know where you're making more waste at to match
Okay,
it?
yeah. So we know where we're spending the most amount of our money. So in this case, our meat is the highest cost. And so maybe that if we're trying to reduce our food cost, maybe that might be a section that we could look at to try to reduce the food cost. Because if you look, we're at 35%. That's a big number for food cost. Now, for a steakhouse, that might make sense, right? But it's really important to be able to look to see where our budget is going, and that helps us identify where we can make changes for the future, right? So we're going to use what tool here? We have sales, food cost, and food cost percentage. What tool are we going to use?
Triangle.
We're using the triangle. Okay, and if I were you, as you're getting used to this, I would recommend drawing this on every single problem. And what are we looking for in this case? Food cost. So I'm going to scratch that out. And then, not only am I going to scratch that out, I'm going to write my formula, percent times sales. And then right under that formula, I'm going to do percentage of 32% times $25,000. Okay. And so what is my food cost? What is my food budget?
$8,000.
$8,000 total? Okay. So as I'm purchasing my food, I'm keeping track. I've got $8,000. In the summertime, when I was working in Maine, I had $16,000 for my budget. Okay. Now, when I go in that first week, there is no food in the kitchen because the building has been closed for 9 months. They literally locked the door in August and then we opened it back up in June. Okay. So it's been empty all winter. So I have zero food in my pantry. So what do you think my first bill is going to be? Pretty big, right? I'm buying all new stuff. But then as I go throughout the summer, okay, yeah, my first week, it might be a $3,000 order. Week 2, it might be about 2,000. But by that point, by week 3 and 4, I have a lot of the staples, right? Like I'll buy bulk stuff and I'll use that. So then maybe I'll only spend $1,000 a week after that. Okay. And then as I get closer to the end of the summer, I don't want any extra food in there. And so I am probably going as little as possible on my orders to make sure I might actually go to the grocery store more because I don't want to buy a box of 6 cans of refried beans because I only have to serve Mexican one more night. And so I don't want 5 extra cans. And so knowing what your budget is allows you to plan accordingly. Okay. What about sales? This is a number that we can look at to figure out how much sales do we have to meet our budget. So if my food costs, I've got percentage, sales, and cost. So if I'm looking for sales, I cover that up. And then I might actually write my formula, cost divided by percentage. $3,250 divided by 0.29. So that means my sales is what? 11,000?
11,206.9. If you round it.
206. Okay, that's fine. And some pennies, right? And some cents.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How many cents? 89 cents. Cool. So that means at the end of the day, end of my time period, if I spent $3,250 on food ingredients, when I go to that cash register and run a report, my sales needs to be $11,206.89. Okay, so I'm testing to see, did I actually lead what's the word I'm looking for? Did I actually measure up to the budget that I set for myself? Okay. Let's do this last one. Okay. Yeah, we got three more slides, okay? So on your homework for chapter 1 or chapter 2, your homework for chapter 2, there's gonna be a problem just like this. So you can go back to this live recorded lecture, go back to the last 5 minutes of class and see how I work this out. This is a 2-step, right? We are combining not only the triangle, but we're also combining that forecasting we talked about at the beginning of chapter 2, okay? So we first have to figure out the increase. That's the first step. The second step is to then use the triangle. Okay, so my last period, my food cost was $43,250. And I want to increase by 0.25% or 2.5%. So I take this and I multiply by what? I can multiply by 0.25, or I can do my shortcut and add the 1 right there, right? So multiply by 1.025, and I could get what?
$1,080.25.
Say that again?
1,080.25.
Okay, so that's where we're just doing the multiplying, right? By the 0.25.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. We can do it that way. So you said 1,000
1,081.25.
and 25 cents. Okay. And so now we're going to add that to our original number of 43,250. And we get 113, carry the 1, 3. 44,331.25.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's change that 5. Okay, so that is my new budget for food cost. That's my new budget. Okay. Now I can use my triangle. Triangle, cost, percent, sales. Looking for sales. So cost divided by our 30% food cost. Oops, let me take that percentage off. So what is our new sales goal? If our food cost is 44,000 and we're aiming for a 30% food cost.
$47,770.83.
$147,770.83. That's how we get what our new sales goal is, our new sales budget is. Okay, so let's take a look. Now we're going to assess the results, and then finally we're going to take corrective action. Okay, so looking on the screen here, we budgeted 430,000 for our food cost, but we actually only spent 410. So that means we were $20,000 under. The parentheses mean under, it's a negative, right? So then if we look at our labor, we were supposed to spend 425, we actually only spent 400,000. So not only was our sales up, right? 400 to 300. So our sales were up, that's good. Our expenses were down as well. So my prime cost, my budget was 65.8%. But in reality, it was 57.9%. So that's a huge savings. Okay. And so we're going to assess the results. This is great. Okay, what did we do to get this? Let's keep doing this. Or on this example, our prime cost, we budgeted at 61.5%, but in reality, it was 65.2%. So that means we went over budget. We spent more money on our expenses than we thought we were going to. That means our profit is going to be decreased. Okay. So let me give you an example. And this is assessing the results and taking corrective action. Okay. When I was a server at TGI Fridays, I had just started at TGI Fridays. I went from Chester's Hamburgers, serving hamburgers to now serving a full menu. I was 19 years old. I didn't eat steak. So I didn't know the difference between rare, medium, medium well, and well done. Okay. And I didn't understand that people had a very specific preference. And so as a server, I didn't want to admit that I made a mistake. So if somebody ordered a steak and I forgot to ask them what their temperature they wanted, I'd be at the computer and I'd look over here and I'd say, Vanessa looks like medium well. So I'll put in medium well. Okay. Well, I got it right?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Or I'll make the assumption, you know what? Medium is right in the middle. So if I forgot to ask them, I'm going to make it medium. Well, for someone who's medium well, medium is too much pink. Okay. And somebody like me who likes medium rare, a well done or medium well is way too cooked. Okay. So I was always having to have steaks remade. Well, when we have steaks remade, that means there's 2 steaks that are going out of my kitchen, and I'm only going to get money from one of them, or maybe even none of them, because I may have to comp the meal because the guest is upset, right? That's why, bakers, no offense, but that's why if I mess up a steak, I might give someone a piece of free cheesecake. Because the cost of that cheesecake, yeah, the menu price says that it's $9, but the cost of that cheesecake compared to the cost of that steak is very different. And so I might give someone a free dessert so that way I don't have to comp off that steak off of their meal, right? So anyways, Kristen taking corrective action. Kristen was my manager at TGI Fridays. And she said, David, you have at least on average 4 remakes on steaks per shift. That's way too many. And so what she took this neon pink, imagine this is neon pink. She took a neon pink index card and she taped it right inside of my server little checkbook, right? And it said meat temperature in big black letters. So as I'm writing and somebody says, I want a steak, this big neon pink sign right here says meat temp. Oh yeah, how would you like your steak prepared? Okay. And that decreased the number of remakes, which then helps save on costs. Okay. And so as managers, you have to become detectives. We'll talk about this in chapter 7, 8. You have to become a detective. Why? Why is my prime cost 65%? Well, let's look at prime cost. Prime cost, remember, is food and beverage and labor, right? Well, labor is the same. So that means we were right on target with labor. So that means our food and beverage cost, we exceeded it by $50,000. $50,000. Maybe you hired me new and I don't know anything about food and I don't know anything about FIFO. And so I'm prepping food. And as soon as I finish this food, I just put it right in front. And all that food behind goes to waste because we don't serve it first. Okay. And so as a manager, you have to become a detective. Why did we go $50,000 over? You have to go back and discover that. And then once you discover the reason why or potential reasons why, you take corrective action. Okay. When I worked at Chester's Hamburgers, we had, I think, monthly employee meetings, right? I don't remember. I was like 16 to 18 years old, so I don't remember a whole lot, but I never remember my managers trying to involve us as employees in the cost savings. They would just tell us, we wasted so much food last month. But they would never say, hey, why did we waste so much food? And hey, David, if you can save, like when you're on the grill, we notice that you waste four buckets of French fries because you are doing too many French fries in an order. Okay. So if we can get that under control. Somebody else, you got distracted and the whole grill full of bacon burned. That's a huge expense. Okay. If we can bring our costs down, if I can save that $50,000, I would love to throw us a Christmas party where we close the restaurant for the day and we all go to Andretti's and you can bring your whole family and we just have food and play and go-karts and play arcade games and close the restaurant for a day. And I would spend $50,000 on that versus $50,000 on wasted food product. So as managers, if we can do something to inspire our staff to become part of the solution, then they take more ownership in it, and then it helps the business overall. Okay? That's all I have. Thank you all so much. I will post these recordings before I leave tonight. I just want to make sure I have attendance, so let me stop the recording.